Peace, y'all. Welcome to another episode of the Real Ops Podcast. This is episode 12. This one is entitled Environment Requirement. Make sure you get your pen and pad because there's a lot of jewels being dropped. I try to be inspirational and a living testimony that hopefully y'all can receive some revelations through my story and through my trials and tribulations. But before we get started, y'all hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell, share this out because this episode is going to be fire. I know a lot of people don't like to hear the truth, so it's going to take me longer to go viral because I'm not caught up in the culture. I'm caught up in the kingdom, and I'm trying to give y'all some food for thought, some substance that y'all can really digest. Let's dive into it, y'all. No order, no increase. Remember that, because without order, we can never expect an increase on the things that we want. Often we look for increase in favor and in blessings. Yet we don't plan a smart and favorable order in which the things we expect to see or acquire to make sense. We just looking for those things and we just want them because we want them, but we're not really looking at the things that we got to do and the order that those things need to be placed in to make sense. For example, we want to see increase in finances and in status when we aren't good stewards in the current financial status that we have, lacking the literacy, lacking the discipline in our spending habits and or investing because a lot of us want to spend money and we want to get gratitude and feel satisfied and be enlightened in ourselves from being able to spend money, and that's where a lot of our happiness lies, is where we spend money and go and those things. It should be the exact opposite, to where we retracting on those habits. We're looking more at the investment side instead of the spending side so we can acquire those things, putting things in order. Looking for the level to increase without making sure the old habits cease. That's key. We can't look for things to increase without making sure the old habits cease, because we all know you got to get rid of certain things to be able to attain certain things that you never had. Unwilling to do the work on ourselves a lot of times. We won't ever be blessed to end up in a bigger mess. God will never bless us with more than we can handle. And that goes on both sides. He's not going to give us too much to where we end up in a mess and we end up with more stress. But at the same time, when things seem overwhelming, he's still not giving us more than we can handle. A lot of times it comes with, the willingness, because he will remove problems. But a lot of times he keeps us in the same place until we figure out the breakthrough. And that's just learning why the things haven't changed and why we still sitting in a place that, we've been praying to get out of. And a lot of us get stuck in a state of insanity. And what do I mean by that? Well, in the sense of doing the same things and keeping the same habits, but looking and expecting for a new outcome or favor to fall upon us. That's just being insane. You keep doing the same things you was doing 3 years ago, and you wondering why, nothing has changed. And at the end of the day, if you're expecting change out of that, there's a little small level of insanity, because we all know in our righteous mind will tell us that's just not how things work. We have to uncover why we sitting in that same spot that we've been praying to be released from. Sometimes the test is the stress, the patience to see who will be a blessing to, and not so much what will be a blessing for us, but that test is to see who will be a blessing to. Because a lot of times in my mind, God wants to use us as the base or the source of the blessing for other people. You know what I'm saying? Because we always hear it's better to give than to receive. But I don't really think a lot of us are in tune with that. So let me break that down, starting with the word than. Remember, the phrase is it's better to give than receive. Than, THAN, which by definition is being the second element in comparison to something else. So think about it. If than to receive is the second element, then it's better to give is obviously the first element in that comparison. So then receiving on the receiving end is never going to come before the giving, because that's going to be the first element before the then that can surface in the situation that it applies to. Let me run that back just in case y'all didn't get that. Then, which by definition is being the second element in comparison, and we're talking about it's better to give than receive. Giving is always going to be the first element of comparison. So that's part of the order. That is part of the order that we look to increase. We have to have things in order to be able to increase. So we have to give before we expect to increase on the receiving end. So those things require order of the plan, the tests, the lessons on the trials and the tribulations. And then comes the then, in which we receive the favor and we receive the blessing from God, that we can ultimately see the increase, feel the increase, because we've already given, we've already served, we've already been good stewards, we already fixed ourselves, we already did the hard work, the things that weren't easy that a lot of people try to avoid. And we just can't sit back and comply and just go with things. We got to commit to what's uncomfortable and make sure that we're growing in order to see that increase. Hope y'all picking up what I'm dropping right now. The plan and test, which we learn how to strategize the order of fixing things within the change from ourselves, which will in return determine the duration and the hold on the increase. Because we can pray for it, but we always know there's a duration of time. It's not going to come right away. And a lot of that comes from the requirement of our environment. And the requirement of our environment is a prerequisite. It's something that's pre-required in our current environment that we have to be able to take heed to. We got to be able to see what's going on in my current environment. Excuse me, that God is requiring of me in order for me to see the increase down the line. And the older I get, the clearer it becomes to see our requirement for increase is already in our current environment. And a lot of times it's just the tests or the blessings, you know, it's already existing in our current environment. And if we lack that vision and, we have too much slack in the discipline of being a good steward, in which God is looking for us to do the first part of that, better to give than receive. He's looking for us to be that steward. He's looking for us to be that blessing. He's looking for us to be in the state of giving, to be able to serve, to be able to do what's necessary in order to see the then we will receive. And that's why I say, and I know from experience, that putting those things in a proper order are necessary. The order of self requirement in the environment. Y'all write that down. The order of self requirement in the environment is what's going to determine the duration of the increase. And that's all. We can't have increase without order. There's no increase if we don't have any order. Okay. So a lot of times we have to reorder our state of mental health. That's the biggest prerequisite to the increase in wealth and status, is reordering our mental health to where we're able to change our perception, we're able to get a new direction, we're able to look at the space and the current environment that we're sitting in, and we're able to visually see and retract the things that are necessary, that are required, those prerequisites that a lot of people overlook and just be asking for things, praying for things. Oh, well, when the prayers call, the blessings fall. Now, that ain't really how that works. You know what I'm saying? Because you can pray and pray and pray. But if you're not praying on the right things, and if you're not committing to that, and you're just complying because you feel like you're supposed to get up in the morning and pray and just pray just to be praying. But we also have to have an order in the things that we're praying for. And it's got to all make sense, y'all. We just can't be asking for things out of order that don't make sense. You know what I'm saying? It's bigger than that. And unless we thinking about it, and unless we reordering our mental health in those stages, in that state, in that season, then we will never really be able to see the reason and the breakthrough. Because the breakthrough is understanding why we still sitting in that same spot, not being crazy, not being insane and expecting something, but doing the analyzing and inspecting why we still sitting in the same place. But damn, why am I still, sitting here? I've been asking for this, I've been asking for that. You need to observe your environment and look at there's a bigger requirement in your environment. That's why you're still stuck sitting in the same place because you haven't met that prerequisite in that current environment to be able to see that increase in the new one. And a lot of times looking for the mention, looking for the giving and being the base and source to bless others before it happens, that's that's a lot of times in those seasons, that's where we feel stretched and that's where we feel stressed out. But actually, that's part of the requirement in that environment. Because I know for me personally, my patience has been tested. My patience has been stretched. There's been a lot of stress and strain on my patience in certain seasons. And not being able to visualize what it was, not being able to put my hand on that breakthrough, it it caused that stress because I couldn't see the direction or where exactly God was pulling me. And I was left to watch others receive the same things that I was praying for. But I was stuck in that current environment because I wasn't meeting the requirement. There was something that God was requiring for me in that current environment that I hadn't met as a prerequisite for me to be able to get out. And what was that? At the end of the day, it was not having the vision, to realize that my patience was being groomed. I was being stretched and strained and I was being groomed. It's like I was in a weight room. I was training for something way bigger than the blessing that I can see. And me looking at other people kind of like them receiving the things that I had prayed for was that was a requirement for me to understand that my presence was the blessing. My presence, the favor on me, turned out to be the blessing for other people. And my time wasn't coming. That's where I sat in that duration. You know what I'm saying? To where it was like, well, damn, what's going on? I'm sitting here. I'm showing up every day. I'm not just complying. I'm committed to what's going on. But it seems like the things that I'm praying for, everybody's around me are reaping those blessings and they're receiving that favor, but it's not falling on me yet. Why am I having to be forced to be so patient? And at the end of the day, I realized I had to grow my self patience for more than I could see at the time. Seeing after the fact, once I got through that season, how God had way bigger blessings for me. The things that I was praying for was small, and He was able to give those to those people and groom me and put me in a raid room with pressure, with my patience and building up my patience and grooming my patience because it was going to take longer and I was going to have to be stronger to climb that mountain that He had resting for me to stand on top of. And that favor and that blessing was way bigger than what I could see and what I was praying for at that time. So there was no way He was going to sell me short in a sense. And that's where the requirement of my environment at that time was for me to sit still, for me to watch other people eat, for me to not understand why I wasn't going through certain things. And the biggest test of all that was just staying down, staying 10 toes down, staying committed, even when you couldn't see or when it didn't compute, it didn't make sense. That's the biggest strain and the biggest stress. When you can be committed, you can be waking up every day, you feel like you're doing all the right things, but it's just not adding up. It's not computed. Well, damn, you even question God sometimes. Well, damn, God, I'm showing up every day. I'm doing the work every day. I'm praying. I'm trying to stay a good steward. I'm serving. You know what I'm saying? I'm giving so I can make sure that I can receive. But it seems like the more giving I give, the more they receive, and the less I'm just stuck to perceive and sit here and see. not knowing that that was my duration, that time, and that patience. That was my duration, and that was my requirement in my environment in that season, to be able to stay committed through the duration and be a blessing to other people and watch other people eat. That was my order at that time because it wasn't my time. Like I said, he had something way bigger and way greater for me to climb once I got out of that season and I built up that mental muscle and I built up that patience and I built up that strength. I was able to elevate, and he raised my altitude mainly because of my attitude and my commitment to show up and to be there, be a blessing for others, and to keep the faith. A lot of times you hear people say, well, sometimes you just got to fake it till you make it. Nah, I was taught and I was learned that you got to faith it till you make it. FAITH. You got to faith it, not fake it. You got to faith it. You got to keep that faith. You got to stay down. You got to stay committed until you make it. And that's part of the environment, and that's part of the requirement sometimes, is that faith. That faith is the duration. That faith is the waiting process. That faith is the biggest strain and the biggest stress and the biggest test that we will go through. You know what I'm saying? Testing our faith. I seen something earlier where it said God is not worried about, you know what I'm saying? A lot of things, or what was it? Your blessings happen bigger. Your blessings come bigger than what you thought you can afford, because God is not looking at your bank account. He's looking at your faith account. And he's trying to see how much faith you're going to hold on to, and how much you're going to believe in yourself and stay down and stay committed until those things can turn into favor and increase. So in that particular season, the duration of the increase had increased because it will require more time and more stretch and more strain and more stress for me to have the strength and endurance for the bigger blessing that was ultimately coming up next, y'all. What I had to realize is that was his method of training. That was me meeting my requirement of the environment, is to hurt a little bit. Nothing good is comes easy. You know what I'm saying? So you can't expect for it to feel good or to feel a certain way and it's coming easy. And the analogy I was given, if anybody drives a stick shift car, when you're learning how to drive a stick, the hardest thing to do is to get the clutch and the gas together when you're coming up out of first. But you got to think, it's a little irky, it's a little jerky. But after you come up out of first and you're in second, you get to third. By the time you get to either fourth or fifth gear, now you're coasting. And that's because there's an order. There's an order. If even driving a car, there's an order to increase the speed. So there's an order on our lives to increase, the favor, to increase those blessings. And knowing I have to, at the end, being able to handle more, because my blessing was much more and I was multiplied in favor for enduring the requirement of my environment. Ultimately, it just grew my faith, and it just gave me more faith for the next season. So whenever something came up or whenever I was faced with something, I was put in a situation, it let me know that my soul and my spirit had to be bigger than my role. Let me drop that on you. Pastor told me that. My soul had to be bigger than my role, because a lot of times we get caught up on titles and we get caught up on things feeling like, well, because my title is the owner, I'm supposed to reap certain benefits or certain things are supposed to come. When a lot of times your soul got to be bigger, because you got to want to see everybody eat before you. You got to want to put food on their plate before you. If you got kids, sometimes you make your kids plate and all that, and by the time you make your plate, you got to heat the food up because you wanted to make sure their plate was hot. In your soul, you couldn't get caught up in your role, because if I was worried about, you know, my food being hot and all that, and now my kids is eating cold food, that's out of order. that's just out of order because they didn't ask to be here. So us as adults and us as those parents, we had to make sure that they ate first, make sure that they had enough food, and then whatever was left, you know what I'm saying? Then we would put food on our plate. Then we would probably have to reheat it or whatever it may be, you know. So my vision and my soul had to be bigger than my role. But that was one of those things I would have never seen if I didn't stay down, if I didn't stay committed, and if I didn't really understand that there was a requirement in every environment. And in that current season, in that current environment, my requirement was to allow myself to be tested, allow my patience to be stretched, you know, allow myself to be a blessing to others. And to give is better than to receive. And like I said, Dan is always going to be the second element of comparison. I hope y'all picking up what I'm dropping out, man. Because if not, you might want to rewind this. You might want to watch it again. The requirement of the environment. I was able to be a good steward and sit still in that environment and meet all my requirements and my prerequisites and do all the things that God was looking for me to do, be a blessing to others, give, be patient, stay committed, stay faith. He changed my environment because I met my requirement. And there's no increase without order. No order, no increase. So the biggest message and the biggest thing I hope y'all got from this message today was that we have to put things in order. We have to first put things in order. We have to plan things. We have to be ready for the test and the process that comes along with those plans. Make sure it's in a sensible, strategic order before we ask for increase. And as we're asking for increase, we have to observe our environment to make sure we're meeting the current requirement.